Hello, hello, hello. I gotta make sure my microphone is right so that people can hear me. So I'll make sure hopefully I'm good and loud enough. But we're back. Welcome to another episode of NX Office Hours. We talk about lots of cool things. We talk about the NX ecosystem. We talk about other ecosystems, and we have a special project today that we're going to talk about and how it integrates with NX. You've seen me before, Brandon T. Roberts on Twitter, and I have a special guest. All my guests are special, but another special guest today. And Katerina, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Brandon, for having me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a JavaScript engineer. I work for Narwhal, and I also contribute to NX. Um, I am a Google developer expert for Angular web technologies and the Google Maps platform. And lately, I'm also doing some entrepreneurship with some friends.
Okay.
And yeah, and I also mentor women in tech.
Yeah, I've seen you. Yeah, you've definitely done a lot in the Angular ecosystem, and definitely do a lot of conference talks and things. And all that. I always really enjoy your talks. So
Thank you.
definitely good stuff there. And like I said, the mentoring of girls in tech is definitely awesome there.
Thank you.
So cool. Thanks to those people in the chat. I see a few people in there that are chiming in already. Like I said, it's next office hours. We take questions sometimes, and if we, I'll go ahead and say it up front. If we'll see how many, if we get to questions, or if we don't answer your questions now, then we'll save them for later. Because we definitely want to make sure the we are listening to the community. So. But yeah, on that note, we can get into our topic for today, which is if you're watching this, then you it means you want to learn something about Storybook and design systems, and I'm going to learn some stuff too because I haven't done much with Storybook or design systems either. So uh, I'm looking to learn some new tools today, and Katerina is going to show, and we can talk about how those things fit into the workflow and all that. So yeah, we can start with that. I guess where do you want to start? I'll let you. You're the star of the show.
Yeah, I guess potentially the most unknown word that some people may I mean, I guess that most people know what a design system is, but let me explain what it is.
Yep.
So a design system is basically the set of style rules, design rules, reusable
Mm-hmm.
components, fonts, colors that an application or an organization may use.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a site like, for example, the BBC, the site of BBC, I'm saying this example because I think there is an example on the Storybook on the actual Storybook webpage that shows this. You have like a website that has the news header, and you have all the different buttons and the different avatars for the journalists, for example, or
Mm-hmm.
the specific style that a header or a quote or some things are displayed on the screen. So all these rules that explain and describe how these things are supposed to be, they're like the blueprint. These are the design system. This is what is called a design system. So it's quite important for an organization, a large organization or a large application to have a design system because it really helps developers and so it sort of brings developers and designers together,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps when you're stuck and you don't know what to use. You have your design system and you sort of have like a compass to guide you, like this
Mm-hmm.
is how it's supposed to be, and I have to go pick these things from these components and put them here, so it's like it makes things easier.
Yeah, I remember at a previous job that I guess we more or less called it a style guide, but it was more like a design system also, where you had all your, like you said, your components or your things laid out that you wanted to use. Because of course, if you're building like multiple applications and things, you want them to have some level of consistency and like a similar look and feel across different products, right?
Yeah, definitely. So in a past company I was working for, the usual thing is, and that was the case for the past company I was working for, was like you have the designers and they give you a link for Figma, for example, or for
Mm-hmm.
InVisio or something that you can, that these tools sort of have CSS integrations, and you can actually copy the CSS that they sort of spit out, right?
Mm-hmm.
As some sort of, you have this Figma project or this InVisio app that you can zoom in and zoom out and see this thing here and this thing there and how it should work, and you sort of copy and paste from there and you try to imitate that with your code. Um, but
And these
what's
are, or go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, please say.
I was gonna say, and these are they're not just like most of the time these are like I call them living examples, but they're actual pieces of code that you or they're pieces of code that should actually work when you when you use them right. They're not just
Yeah.
like mock-ups and
No, they're not. They're not
yeah.
like mockups. Indeed, you can click them and go from one place to the other place. So these things are very very helpful, and Storybook takes these things one step further, because you have these the Figment, whatever the designers make, you have this as a guide, and when
Mm-hmm.
you create them into components and you create them into actual code and you turn them into actual components made from code, then Storybook actually gives you the ability to browse these components live. Like, as you're browsing Figma, for example, you will now be browsing the actual code that's
Mm-hmm.
you wrote or another developer wrote, and see how the actual code works, right? Because with Figma, you see how it's supposed to work, but with Storybook, you see how it actually works because you're actually viewing the actual component. Um, so how does it do that? Storybook, let me read the the definition on the side, like the elevator page.
Okay.
Is Storybook is an open source tool for building UI components and pages in isolation. So what this means is that when you have, for example, an Angular application or a React application, you have it organized in components. Uh, when you install Storybook in that application, you go in your component folder, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you can create a file that is called, for if my component is called katerina.component.ts, my
Mm-hmm.
story file will be called katerina.stories.ts, for example. And in there, you can actually import the component that you wrote and write some scenarios for it. It sounds like
Mm-hmm.
an E2E test, I guess, for you. For someone who hasn't used it, it sounds like an E2E test. And it sort of does look like that, because you import the actual component and you write some scenarios for it. And then you can start Storybook. You can run Storybook,
Mm-hmm.
and it fires up a local server where it just serves that component, which is pretty amazing, because you do not have like to start like a complex stack and
Mm-hmm.
do a complex navigation to this page to trigger the specific state of this button or this toggle that you need. You can just write that I want this toggle to be on, and just fire it up and see it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I always that I've liked about Storybook and the systems like that is that the biggest part is that you don't have to fire up an entire development stack to like work on one component because
Yeah.
if you have like a large system or a large set of systems that may be using that, then like I said, having to bring up all that infrastructure, or if your maybe application, like say, it's pretty big, um, and you like I said, you have to click around to get to a particular area just to look at that one thing, as opposed to bringing up a separate UI and being able to build out those components faster. That way, it's definitely helps with like your development turnaround.
Yeah, and it also helps because if you also have like a large application, as you said, you don't have to sort of navigate to that specific place and actually trigger the state that you want to test. You can just write this story that will make the component look as you expect it to look. So yeah, that's what Storybook is.
Yeah, and look, and like I said, I've looked at Storybook in the past, and I've used something similar that was like I said, building something in isolation for components. But Storybook has definitely grown a lot, and like I said, as we can see on the site, it has support for multiple frameworks and different ecosystems, which is good that they support those. Um, So yeah, that at least that's just a good intro for Storybook. As far, did you have anything else you wanted to add as far as Storybook in general?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, it does more things, but yeah, I mean that's the essence of it.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about like in general what a design system is, and the like what Storybook does in general. Um, I had brought up the because I did want to look at this one, the like as you mentioned before, the
Yeah, exactly.
uh, BBC Storybook. So they definitely have a good suite of components and things that they can show you what those look like just by clicking through there. And
And you can actually change the colors and change the fonts and everything.
okay,
So yeah,
I'm just gonna do
it's
some fiddling here.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely pretty cool. So, but yeah, I'm sure theirs is fully fleshed out, and they've kind of iterated on this for a while, and like this uh, powers their site and everything. So, definitely some cool stuff there. Um, so yeah, so we have the design system out there. We have Storybook. Um, so how do we're going to talk about like bringing those two things together with NX itself.
Yeah. So if you in the Storybook website, I'll find the link. They have a pretty great guide of how to build a design system with Storybook.
Okay.
And as you're reading these guides, you're thinking, or I was thinking that, or we are all thinking that NX will definitely make this much easier to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're building a design system, for example, you have to think of all sorts of things. You have to organize your code. You have to think of how to break up your code in smaller components, of
Mm-hmm.
how to keep things organized, of think of the architecture, of thinking of reusability, of course. Um, so all these things, NX helps you definitely with all these things because um, with NX, of course, you can start developing in a monorepo, and NX and the design system would be benefited from that because you would have your applications and then you would have your libraries that would be split up, for example, in presentational components, and this that would impose a much more efficient way to develop your design system, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, NX helps a lot with streamlining the whole process, like with the testing and the building, and integrating with the CI. So the interesting thing about Storybook is that, as you saw, you can not only can you build it and not only can you fire it up locally and test it, you can also actually build it and deploy it and
Oh
have
yeah.
it presentable like we saw with the BBC case. Um, and what's also great is that NX integrates with Storybook, and the cool thing is that it actually generates stories for you. So if
Okay.
you have some components ready, you don't if you already have your design system ready, for example, and you have some components ready, you don't even have to write code. You just you just start you just install an X, and an X will generate stories for you using the Storybook package. It will analyze your components and it will analyze the inputs or the props, for example,
Mm-hmm.
for for React, and it will generate some stories for you that you can instantly use. And what it will also do, because NX integrates with Cypress and Storybook works with Cypress too, NX will generate end-to-end tests that will use Cypress. And in Cypress, you don't even have to write new scenarios. You can just import stories and just fire up these stories, and Cypress will test the stories without you needing to write new E2E tests, which is also cool, I think, because you can actually reuse the work that you have already done.
Yeah, that is very cool. It's like you said, it's you essentially get a complete system out of like from end to end, not that end to end, but you get a complete system there as far as like you said, being able to build components like just by themselves and being able to see how they function, see what the inputs and outputs are, props, and then like you said, even go take it to the next step as far as being able to um, test those using like end-to-end tests. To definitely a lot of flexibility there. I'm not sure if this was the link you were mentioning before about the
Yes,
building.
that's the
Okay,
one. That's the
design
one.
systems for developers. Yeah, so they even have some of this they have where they walk you through how to put the design system together. But like you said, if you're working with NX monorepos, then you get a lot of these like a lot of the setup and generation parts out of the box there. So I did paste a link to the chat for the in the chat for those to go and read the post by Katerina also that talks about what we're gonna some of the things we're gonna cover here as far as building your own design system there. So yeah, like I said, that post is there. We just published it. I think it was last week. So definitely check that post out, and we'll link to that post in the show notes there. Um, so yeah, those are there any other like I would like to talk about like some of the pieces that you mentioned before about
Sure.
how like how does building your components in smaller libraries and that like factor into how your design system works. Like you said, you want to how do is that something that you're like optimizing for that helps with your design system or your storybook setup also is just having smaller components?
It's not really smaller components per se, but if you so the first thing I would do if someone would ask me to if someone would show me some mockups, for example, and would tell me, let's make this into an application, I would try to think how to break this down into smaller parts. Like, for example, in this page here, I would try to identify that, okay, we have a logo on the top left, we have a menu, the menu items are all the same, we have a title, we have a button, we have different states of the button, we have some chips down at the bottom right, we have an image. So I would try to think of all these different things that there are there and try to think how I could break them up into components and break them down, break them down, break them down. And how I think there is also a rule of thumb mentioned in this post, or maybe I've read it somewhere else, that if there is a component, a part of a visual part that you use more than 2 or 3 times, then it's worth making it into a reusable component, for example. I remember it was 2 or 3 years ago that I was doing an interview for Skyscanner, and they had this the task, the take-home exercise for the interview. They gave you this UI that you had to build, right? And one of the comments that I got, and they sort of said that we're looking at a component-based architecture, and one of the comments that I got back was that you could break this even more down to more components. And
Okay.
I always think back to that comment from that interview. By the way, I was not hired for Skyscanner.
Hey,
It's okay.
it's okay. It worked. I think it worked out
Yeah.
better for us. So
Yeah. So yeah, I always remember that. And yeah, and the great thing about the library is that you can use in NX because so in NX you have a monorepo, so it works pretty well if you have different libraries. So this enables you to have a library, for example, that is just presentational components, like no logic, and it's just UI components. And then you can put all the logic in another components, and then you can bring all this together and import them in an application. So this is, this is how it helps, if this answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, definitely so. And like I said, I also like breaking components down. Yeah, if I see a component with a lot of pieces in it, then I also take a look at um, trying to break it down into smaller pieces so that maybe it can be reused, or like you said, maybe it turns into like a shared library of components or things like that. So definitely agree with what you said there. Let's see. I see a couple people have some questions, and we'll look at those questions when we get there. Um, so I guess where do we want to go next? Do you want to like walk through how we go through set up
Yeah,
some of the
sure.
steps?
Sure. So let me share my screen, and
Okay.
let's hope that there is not a very great lag. Yeah.
We'll work with it either way because I think it's some good content in here. So
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to I have recorded the part of creating an NX workspace and in Storybook because I guess most of you, of the viewers, I guess if you're at NX office hours, you have used NX. So
yeah, we got some. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we got some regulars in here, and
yeah,
maybe some new people that are looking to add their own design system. So maybe there's a mix. I'm sure the chat will let us know either way. Uh,
cool.
but if you're ready for me to add your screen, just let me know.
Yes, I am ready. You can add my screen.
Okay, there we go.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Wow, that was fast. Okay. So let's see. So yeah, this is the video where you just type npx create an NX workspace and then the name of the monorepo, and it will create an NX workspace. So now you have to choose which application to start with in your workspace, and we will choose React for this example. And you give the application a name, and you choose the default style format. So Storybook suggests to use style components for a design system because
Okay.
it keeps all the style, it keeps everything like in a single file and everything in a single place, and it works better for design systems. I have not used style components much. Sorry. So,
That's okay.
so for this example, I think I chose CSS. Yeah. So usually I choose yes, use an Nextcloud. I said no now. So yes, it will install everything, and afterwards the workspace will be ready, and then all you have to do is type yarn add the Nrwlian Storybook package, which is at Nrwlian/Storybook, and this package contains all the scripts that you need, that NX needs in order to generate stories for you and generate Storybook configuration for you, and also some migrations that I didn't talk about, but maybe we will talk about later. So blah blah blah. It installs the Storybook. So
And
let's go.
the Storybook package works for React and Angular, correct?
React and Angular. We have so the thing is that for React and Angular, we have code generators, but the Nrwlian Storybook package does support other Storybook renderers as well. So if
Okay.
you do the manual work, because it was recent actually, it was recently added to work that way. I think if you do the manual work of creating stories and writing storybook configurations on your own, and then you just want to serve the storybook and build storybook and serve, build, test, and whatever, then Nrwlian supports that, NX supports that if you use HTML, for example, or Svelte. But it will not do the work of actually doing the code generation part.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the catch. Potentially someday.
Yeah, I would say we can definitely. I know we have plugins for Vue and Svelte and other ecosystems, so that I'm sure we're if we don't if those plugins don't support it yet, then they're probably working on it at some point. So, but we know
Yeah.
the option is there to use it.
Yeah. So now we installed the Nrwlian Storybook package, and I went after I did this. I went into the trouble of generating a library, a UI library, and adding Storybook to it. But we will do it as well manually so that you can see it. But now, for example, initially I had created the UI library and I had added the React component here. And I clicked the NX generator, the storybook generator, and it generated automatically this story. But let's see how you can do it on your own. I can use NX console to show you. NX console is
Gotta get that NX console plug in there.
Yeah.
If you're not using if you're using VS Code and you're not using NX console, you need to go ahead and go to the extensions and hit that install button for NX console there, so you can generate these things even quicker.
So let's generate a React application. A React library. Let's give it the name Katerina because I cannot think of another name now. Oops. And do we want anything else? No. And run. And now we have the new Katerina library.
So
and
is that what you use when you're like demoing things? You got the Katerina component and then the Katerina library and everything. Katerina, I see where it's going. Good. I see where it's going.
Another thing I do is when I write console logs in for example, I work now for a client and there's a code base that is used by hundreds of developers. Whenever I write a console log, I start the log message with Katerina so that afterwards I search Katerina and in case I have forgotten any console logs.
Okay, yeah, that's a good tip. I didn't even think to do that. I might have to use that one too.
Yeah. So now we have a library generated by NX, just a normal library with a normal component. And now I can go to the NX console. And actually, let me add a prop here. Actually, no, I will not add the prop. And if I go to the NX console, I see that I have the Nrwlian React Storybook configuration, which set up Storybook for a React library. And if I click this, the library was called Katerina, yes. And I say I want to configure Cypress, generate Cypress specs that will automatically generate spec files in a Cypress C2E app. And it will generate stories files, and I run it. Then you will see that in here it added a Storybook folder, which has some configurations for Storybook, which are default for everything, and some Webpack configuration and some tsconfig configuration. And then it also created the Katerina story file. And now I can go and if I go now and run Storybook.
See, now you're showing me more tips here. You're just running things directly from the NX console project on the side there. I'm up here running all these things manually.
Well,
like I said, I'm learning some new things here. So some good tips.
So now here is my component, which I put from here the Katerina component. Welcome to Katerina, and here it is. If I had some props, they would appear here, and I could edit them, and like we saw with the color in the BBC example. So that's it. As you saw, it's very, very simple. You just click a button and say generate storybook configuration, and it will just generate the stories for you.
Okay, so is this something that you like can continually have to do? Let's say if you update, I don't know if you're gonna excuse me, go to that next, but if you would have added props, or if you go like let's say you update your component, does it support those things also?
Yes. So if I update my component and I add a prop here, and like this, right? Yes, I think. Okay, this is welcome to an X. Okay, now there's an error. No. Okay.
Should it
Now.
be props? Should it be props.test?
Oh,
Or?
sorry. Long
No,
time
no.
since I touched React.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no problem.
Okay.
There we go.
Oops. Yeah, I don't know what. Oh, okay. Yeah, now it's wrong because it sees that here we have some props.
Oh,
So
right.
you go to an X, and I hope this works. If you generate stories
Mm-hmm.
for Katerina, I think it will regenerate everything. Let's see.
Cool. Yeah,
Yes.
look at updated.
Yes, so it fixed it, you see?
Okay, cool.
So now we can run again. Is it still running? No, it's not running still. What am I saying? So now if I go and run again. So yeah, if you update everything, there is the other schematic, which is simpler. It will not generate the whole configuration. It will just go and generate stories for the new components or for the components that have been affected for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so even if you have some, that's another good thing there. Even if you have some components that you haven't changed, and you run that again, then it'll just leave those as they were, right?
I want to say yes.
Okay. I'm going to go with yes.
I'm going to go with yes, but I'm not sure. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Maybe not. I'm sure Yuri is watching this and pulling his hair.
Yuri, I'm sure he's doing fine. If he's in the chat, he'll chime in, and then we can put his we can put his comment up here if so. But yeah.
Yeah, and of course it's not showing something now because I should have put something in the boolean there. But yes, you see the toggle here that is just a boolean, and you see that the story is updated. So yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So you see how simple it is, and if you're also using the NX console, you don't even have to type the commands. You just a click of a button, right? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. And you didn't have to, like I said, you wired all that up just by like you didn't have to type much besides, of course, the Katerina libraries and things.
Yeah.
But yeah, you only had to type that a few commands and were able to get that entire stack up there. Like I said, with that integration there, so definitely cool stuff there.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry. No, go ahead, and I'll go to the migrations afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. So that's kind of like the workflow, right? You work on your components, you regenerate your stories, and then you kind of tweak your components to get them like in a place where you're ready to drop them in the application.
Yep.
Cool.
So yeah, and then you just and yeah, you have your components, you have everything, and then you fire up Storybook, and you just have you see the components of a certain library just appear in Storybook. If I had more components here, they would appear underneath here, like we saw in the BBC example. What's interesting is that Storybook has this feature called Storybook configuration, where you can, it's like, I think it's like a little bit like run many, or I don't know. So you can run, you have a configuration file that you have to manually create on your own. NX does not create that for you. You can create this configuration file, and you can add different ports for different storybooks. So if you have multiple libraries,
Okay.
like here we have the UI library and the Katerina library, we can say that Katerina will run in 4400 and UI will run in 4500, or I don't know where. And you can fire up Storybook and it will show the different storybooks under the same thing here. Because
Okay.
yeah, here we only see from one library, but with Storybook composition, we can show more than one libraries or more than one storybooks at one time.
Okay. Yeah. Excuse me. We got a question here. Is there a way to have one storybook for a monorepo project with multiple libraries?
Yes, so the answer is no, because each library, so each application, each project needs its own storybook. Because as you see here, we have one root storybook folder where we can add some general settings, and some general settings for Webpack, for tsconfig. But each library has its own storybook configuration and its project, where the root one is imported. And if you don't want anything specific, you just don't add it, you just keep the defaults. But with Storybook composition that I said, you can create, I think in the root folder or somewhere, this configuration file that will enable you to run all the different storybooks and
In
show
one
them
place, yeah.
under one place, yeah. But you will have to have one specific storybook for each one of your projects.
I see. Yeah, so I think that, yeah, answer, yeah, well, I don't think that was a good answer to that question, and I think you had pretty much covered that one. And this another one, can I roll back if the executed command, if I executed the command with the wrong configurations? Yes, and I think this is more uh, like it's more of a source control question. If someone generated the storybook and they didn't put the right, maybe they didn't put the right project in, or something like that. But you could easily, I believe you could pretty much do that with just rolling back the changes in your
Yeah.
repository and then just
Yeah.
rerunning them again with NX console, because it saves you time. Gotta throw the plugs in there.
Yeah.
Either way. Um, so yeah, the in that the post that you wrote was using, I believe you used React in the post that you wrote for the
Yeah.
blog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a question. So would you leverage other tools to build design systems for React-based systems? How easy are Tailwind or Shocker UI as libraries to build reusable design system elements?
I haven't used this. I haven't used Tailwind or the other tools, so I couldn't really say.
Yeah.
But I guess the answer is that whatever works best for you. So if you have
Mm-hmm.
experience with Tailwind, I guess that this would be the easiest way or the fastest way for you to go. But as you saw, NX has a lot of things going for it. So I don't know.
Yeah, but I think like you mentioned before, even you just used CSS instead of style components
Yeah.
for your example, right? So I would think that you would be able to uh, use that or use other patterns or libraries for your components and still have them pretty much work. Maybe it'll take a little more integration there, but I think I don't see why that wouldn't be something that you could
Yeah, I
use.
mean, NX supports it, and as you saw, NX supports all different types of styles, right?
Yeah, there are definitely there are definitely many ways you can style things in React out of the box. I will say that. And even in Angular too, there are multiple ways that you can style your components, whether you're just like using the built-in approach or Tailwind or something like that. So definitely some options there. But yeah, you said that like you have your initial setup for Storybook, and then you can generate your stories. And let's like I think we're kind of going through this now where you can you're on one version of Storybook, and you mentioned something about migrations and
Yeah.
how you can maybe move from one version to the next, or I guess how does that work?
So, very good question. So, if you go to the NX console and you browse, you can see that you have Storybook migrate defaults 5 to 6. So, Storybook, when it went from version 5.3 to version 6, they did a major change. They basically did a breaking change where they changed the files that are added in the .storybook folder. They changed the names and the contents of these files. So if you have a large organization, a large application, you may have hundreds of libraries and hundreds of .storybook folders. So we wrote a schematic, a generator that will check the version of Storybook that you have, and it will actually go through all of your libraries and generate the new configuration, the Storybook 6 configuration for you, and it will put the old configuration into an underscore old folder, because you may have some custom configurations there that you may want to copy. So this is what the migrator will do, and it will also update all the packages to the versions that they need to be. So yeah, that's it. It saves you a lot of work, because usually we do not usually there aren't many changes that you do to the default configuration, so it's pretty handy. And now I think it's landing in the next version, or I know it's ready and it's sort of merged already. We have a new migrator that will migrate your Angular stories to Storybook 6.2, because there was another breaking change, or I think just change, that will be deprecated after version 7, I think, that changed some syntax of the actual stories. So we went into, so this new schematic will find all of your Angular stories, and it will fix the syntax for you. So it will actually do the code changes that you would have to do manually to go to version 6.2. Which is, yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
handy again.
very cool. Definitely some good work you all are doing in the Storybook package there. Because like I said, I remember going from version 5 to version 6 was, like I said, a pretty big feat in itself. Even just the changes that they made and trying to adapt
Yeah,
like existing workspaces to be able to let them migrate to the latest version at the time also. So definitely good there. Philip chimed in on you can have a shared Storybook instance. You still need a Storybook config for each individual library, but you can have a Storybook config that renders them all. And I think that goes along with what you mentioned earlier about even if you have the different storybooks on individual ports, it can combine them all together into one as far as displaying them. Um, so yeah, definitely good one there. This was a good question. I don't know if you saw any. Did you see any questions in the chat that were uh, ones that you
I
think we can look at?
is my screen still being shared? No,
Yeah, I could.
right?
I can still see your screen.
No, don't need to. Yeah, let's unshare my screen.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you. Let
There we
me look
go.
at the chat. Yeah, I had to put.
Yeah, I'll
Let me put StreamYard in my other monitor.
yeah, I'll bring up one here, and then if we'll try to do
Sure.
this one, and then I think we'll be about good for this one. Uh, this one's should we write all the business logic like fetching and all the implementation in a component to work with Storybook. Um, and I think that goes along with writing your components in isolation, but I don't think that you would have to do you don't have to do anything specific with your components for a Storybook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, just how it is, and you don't have to do anything else.
Yeah. So yeah, you can build your components the same way you would build them if you didn't have Storybook, and then like I said, it's an additional layer you can have there to kind of build them in isolation, so you're not having to build them inside the app.
Yeah, and maybe the question means that if you have like if a component fetches some data from a remote place or I don't know what, then what would
Hmm.
happen? Would you have to fire up a server as well or anything? But I think I'm pretty sure that in Storybook you could actually mock the data that you want. So because it does sort of work like an E2 test, right?
Hmm.
So if you wouldn't have to fire up your server, your remote server or anything, you could just write some mock data that this component could use in order to display what you want,
Yeah. Okay.
maybe.
No, I mean that makes sense to me. Like I said, even I would say if you're building some of those components that way, then maybe they should be a little more isolated from like HTTP interactions and things like that. But if those are ones are just like reusable ones, that would be a good way to keep those. Then that the way you can just drive them from the Storybook instance itself and like tweak the values and things that go in there. So yeah, that I think that is. I didn't see any additional questions in the chat room, so I think that's a good place to call it there. We can start get these additional plugs in here. So I'm going to bring the I'm going to bring the share back up here. Um, we already talked about, and one thing we didn't mention is that Storybook is built with NX, which was a good collaboration
Of
effort that we
course.
had there. So we recommend using Storybook in your applications, and then in turn, we worked with the Storybook people um, about integrating NX into their workflow because we saw the value in both areas. So definitely some cool stuff there. So if you want to contribute to Storybook, you can check out their GitHub project and of course give them a star. Give NX, go to nx.dev, take a look at our docs, and we can just learn more about how to use Storybook and build your own design systems. Because as we mentioned, if you're working in a monorepo and you have multiple applications and you want to have a better consistency there and share components and be able to build those things in isolation, definitely check out NX for that. Let's see. Got the other. So I got to get my banners up here. Um, Follow NX DevTools on Twitter. I'm going to remove this share here. Follow NX DevTools on Twitter. We look at those when people ping us there and try to answer your questions. You definitely go to nx.dev and check out our NX community page where you can join our Slack workspace and get support for if you have other questions about Storybook. And we have Nrwlians that hang out in there too to help out with that. I think I already threw my handle up here, but there it is. Brandon T. Roberts on Twitter. And Katerina is Cyber City. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Cool. Definitely give her a follow on Twitter also. So definitely some fun to be had there. So yeah, if you're interested in contributing to NX, you can go to github.com/narwhal/NX, and we have guides there that show you how to contribute to the repo and help build this open source build framework that we're on. So yeah, with that, I think we're good. I'm gonna get this one off of here, Katerina, thank you once again for coming on NX Office Hours. Like I said, we talked about we wanted to keep things casual, so I hope we kept things pretty casual as far as
Yeah,
conversation goes. So, and
definitely.
hopefully you'll come back on again another time, and we can chat up some more about some other cool stuff that you're doing, because definitely doing a lot of that.
Sure, great. Thank you for having me. It was great fun.
Yeah, sure. And on that, I think we'll call it. So thanks to everyone in the chat. We will see you in a couple of weeks on the next session of NX Office Hours. Thanks. See ya.
Cool. Bye.